Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. We will, of course, be discussing chapter 6 of The Other Westmore tonight. And we're going to start, as we usually do when we've been discussing Westmore, we're going to be talking about our answers on the Likert survey that we all hopefully took back when we were talking about chapter 1. But first, before we get into all of that, how are you, Dana?
I'm pretty good.
You had to think about it for a second.
Well, I mean, there have definitely been ups and downs this week.
Yeah.
Um, we got a surprise in the mail today that we've been expecting.
Yes.
Got
Yes.
some nice mail. Um, that's a good thing. My nose is slightly runny. I don't know what's blooming right now, but I got the sniffles.
Oh, no.
But I don't feel particularly bad, so that's a
That's good.
plus. It's not. Oh, and I finished. I guess it's out in the living room, waiting to go back to the library. I finished Jane's Deal, and that was very enjoyable. Um, I don't know. I'm losing track.
Because
Well,
you
plus
are you
we just talked on Wednesday,
Yeah,
dude.
I know.
So
There's not. I mean, there may not be
not a whole lot.
a whole lot to update people. On weeks when we do read away, it's like we talk on Wednesday and then we talk 2 days later, and it's like, so how are you? Pretty much the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
If something
So
sucked on Wednesday, it probably still sucks on Friday. If something's good on Wednesday, it's probably still good on Friday.
it's what I say about phone calls. If you don't answer right away, if it's a big deal now, they'll call back. And I mean, if it's a semi big deal, they'll at least leave a voicemail. Or and if they don't, they'll get to it whenever.
Not
And
the
if
end
they
of the
don't even
world.
leave a voicemail, really was it that important?
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, if it's that important, you'll find out about it. That's why,
One way or another.
well, that's why, like, I've never understood. My dad is like this, and a few other people I've known in my life. They're like extremely loyal readers of the obituary pages. Like they make sure that they read the obituaries in the newspaper like every day. I have never understood the appeal of that because whenever I ask, I'm like, what's interesting about the obituaries? Why do you read the? And he's like, well, I want to see who died. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's
Okay,
some
why?
well, I'm like, well, I mean, my position is if it's somebody that important, I'm going to hear about it eventually. Like, why do I, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody close to me dies, I'm not going to have to find out about it in the paper. So, and if it is someone,
Maybe it's not somebody that they're close to though.
maybe
Maybe
it's
it's
like,
he's like got people that he remembers from like back in the day.
and he's like,
People from work that he didn't get along with, so he hasn't kept in touch with them because he doesn't want to talk to them. But he's like, oh man, every day, he's hoping that the world will be a better place.
that's awesome. And he's like, oh, that piece of shit finally bought it. All right, going out for drinks tonight. Maybe that's it. I never considered that it was sort of a petty revenge type of thing. Hmm.
And of course, I think of it right away.
I know you're like, well, I want to find out if my enemies are dead. Like, oh yeah, good point.
You're just you're just a pure cinnamon roll, Steve.
That's yes. That's the case.
Too
Yeah,
good for this sinful earth.
too pure of heart and naive, and just incapable of those kinds of negative thoughts. That's me all over, as you know, and I think as
Yep.
most people know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what you're YouTube famous for, Steve.
Yes, for for being a sweet cinnamon roll.
Well, obviously. I mean,
Obvi-
I guess they could make savory cinnamon rolls, but it's kind of not a thing.
That's true. Yeah, you don't want to put too much salt in a cinnamon roll. Then it's not a cinnamon
Exactly.
roll; it's a salt roll.
Unless it's salty cinnamon.
Radical Bacon asks, "Who'd be an enemy of Dana?"
Oh, where to begin, Radical Bacon? Where to begin? Oh yeah. Oh, I know what I'm going to talk about
Oh yes, please.
because I forgot. I forgot again on Wednesday. The
Oh, did you? Yeah,
the
okay, yeah, yeah.
so
Please, let's talk about that. Yeah.
So I'm trying out they them pronouns.
Yeah.
And I got to, because at the DSA meeting that I went to virtually on Tuesday, and then I forgot about it again on Wednesday. The DSA meeting on Tuesday, they went around. They're like, and give your name and your pronouns. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Now I'm gonna do it. I'm like, all right. So I did it, and then and this is why I don't know if I should ask my students for their pronouns, but I usually don't, because any time that I'm talking about my students and it's not to their parents, I use they them anyway, just to obfuscate everything.
Yeah, sure.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about a
because
student in my classroom and they blah 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 blah.
Of course.
But for the most part, in class, I talk to my students, not about them.
No pronouns needed.
It doesn't come up in class at all. Radical Bacon, it was nerve-wracking. I didn't know how people would react. I mean, it's DSA, so and we were asked to give pronouns.
If they're asking for pronouns,
it's a pretty welcoming bunch. But I present pretty typically, certainly. What's the phrase that? The medical community uses within normal limits. For female presentation.
You're a woman within normal limits.
Exactly. I'm not. I'm not a nice Southern lady, but that's for sure. But I'm pretty typically female, if not stereotypically female. The long hair, and then when I'm on camera, I wear makeup and earrings and a necklace. So, those are typical female things. So, and then it just didn't come up in conversation because I think there were 9 of us, and we just talked to each other.
Right.
So, we might mention somebody by name. We might say, that I think so-and-so said, you were blah, blah, blah. But once we refer to, I'm making the point that so-and-so said, we'd sort of address that person.
Yeah. You don't
in the conversation to make sure that we were getting that person's views correct. So yeah, it ended up not being much of an issue.
Yeah. So, now I know some people who are sort of, because they're either, they're not fully committed to one or the other, or they're just trying it out. Some people, for instance, in your case, they would give both their assigned pronouns and the new pronouns, I guess. So they would say pronouns are she, her, or they. But
well, I've had in the community, I've got I had a note by my name that said any pronouns.
Right.
Right. So I'm curious, sort of, to see. I mean, nobody batted an eye when I said my name's Dana. They. Yeah. So.
That's good.
They, them, or whatever, and we went with that, and that was, nobody blinked or said anything, which I wasn't expecting. But then, I'm curious to see how people seem to react when they use those pronouns for me, and also how I feel about it when I hear people using those pronouns for me. So,
which is why you're trying it out.
Yeah, exactly.
See how it feels.
And that's Radical Bacon. That's why I didn't go with she, they. Because, given how I present and, it doesn't run any tests. I'm not finding anything out.
Right. That makes sense. You're specifically trying out.
I think I would be more likely to receive, she, her for that than they, them.
Yeah.
So I want to specify they, them to see how it goes. So nothing yet. Anyway.
Well, I'm.
So how have you been?
As I told you when you told me about this in private, I'm really proud of you for trying it out. And I know maybe it's a little nerve-wracking at first because you've never, asked to be referred to by different pronouns before, but I mean, I think it's great, and I'm really proud of you for trying it out and exploring
It's interesting.
it.
So,
I
so
have
how have
been
you been? What
I
have
have
you
been
been?
good. As you know, I took way too long to write a video script this week. I'm trying to really keep myself. I'm trying to sort of hold to it to two recorded videos a week plus all of the live streams because I got into a sort of
Pattern.
a pattern where sometimes I would do two videos a week and then sometimes I would only do one video a week, and I want to I have the time. Like there's no real excuse for not doing more. So I want to try to do a video every Monday and every Wednesday, and so e- every other Monday will be I do the Ask a Professional YouTuber videos, which are fun, and on the off Mondays from that, I'm going to try to do sort of video commentaries. And like short like video essays about stuff. And so this Monday will be the next one of those. And I took a few days to write the one that's going to go up on Monday, and
Yeah,
I was a little.
dude. What happened?
Oh, I changed. I wore a shirt. I wore because the video is about the video for Monday is about space travel. So I have my Rogue NASA shirt that I wore, but I changed it for this because I like the Nightwing shirt.
You don't like the Rogue NASA
Oh,
shirt?
I love the Rogue NASA shirt, but I wear the Rogue NASA shirt in the video for Monday.
Yeah, I know, but that's Monday, dude.
Well, pardon me.
I I will say I changed shirts too, but that's because I was wearing a ratty undershirt. No, I'm still in my pajamas. Like, I mean, there are some ways in which I'm not typically feminine, and one of those is the whole the husband with the ratty t-shirt. And it's like, no, like when my husband's undershirts get so ratty that he's not comfortable wearing them under his shirts for like work and stuff because like the collar will show a little bit, and so like once the collar starts separating from the shirt,
Oh, right
and
when the stitches start to pull. Yeah,
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 yeah. So then what I do is I hack off the collar and I hack off the sleeves, and it's got like little holes all through it on the front and on the back. And then that's just one of my pajama shirts.
yeah.
And it worked out really nicely because the shirt that I was wearing for my costume for Miss Minchin is not like completely sheer, but definitely translucent. And so they worked really well under
For
those
like another
because
layer.
they
Yeah,
didn't, since they weren't like spaghetti strap. They weren't like tank tops completely. So you didn't like see straps. They just went all the way out to the seam. But then they didn't have short sleeves that would sort of like bunch up under
yeah.
the shirt. So they were really convenient for that. Plus, they're just nice and loose, and they didn't have anything bunching around my neck. Not, I mean, the other shirt did. So, but yeah, they're soft, they're comfy. I'm just the whole my husband won't throw this stuff away. I'm just like, so he doesn't throw it away. What? I'm just like, why? Why do you care?
Well, I mean,
You're not.
I've never understood why you should give a shit what somebody else is wearing anyway, whether that person is your spouse or just some random shithead on the street. I could not possibly care less about what another person's wearing. Like, you know,
I mean, I have very specific standards, and those standards are safety, health, and safety. So like, if somebody is wearing shorts that I'm concerned about, like bodily fluids,
right?
then not cool. Not cool. I'm not cool with that. Um, long long threads dangling, big fringes or like long chains, they those suckers they love to get caught on door handles.
Yeah.
It's just really inconvenient, and you can like can make you trip and fall. So just be careful with that. Or sliding doors, they have, fringes trailing behind you,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, safety. that
But you know
that's
what?
all.
How else you gonna learn?
Wear shoes, people. Wear
How
shoes.
yes, shoes are good. Shoes are important. Um, so yeah, but so I finished that script,
Mm-hmm.
and I shot that today, and actually, I that video's done. That I uploaded that video, so that's all good.
Dang.
And I
You just
started.
like motored through that sucker.
I
Good
know.
job.
Well, that's the nice thing. I mean, the nice thing about those type of videos is that since it's mostly just me on camera, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just me sort of reading what I wrote through the teleprompter. Like once I get to the point of shooting it, it goes pretty
Yeah,
quick
you
from
don't
that point
have,
on.
yeah, and unlike the Ask a Professional YouTuber videos, sometimes you don't have to set up the
Sometimes,
shots or
right?
anything. You just perform.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm writing the Wednesday video, which is going to be another where do we go from here? Because I haven't done one of those for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
What
then,
did
huh?
what topic are you going for?
Student loan forgiveness.
I think we should do it.
We should forgive student loans.
Yeah.
I agree. That's what I'm going to say in the video. We should.
Well,
Yeah,
probably ought to be a little bit longer than that though.
yeah. I think
I'm
we
just
should do
saying
it.
because now, I mean, otherwise you just given it away.
Yeah. No. Well, I am very much of the Bernie Sanders school on this particular issue because Bernie Sanders is one of the few Democrats. There are a lot of Democrats believe we should forgive substantial amounts of it. Bernie Sanders says let's just forgive all of it, and I'm completely in favor of that. But at the same time, I would accept, $50,000 per borrower or whatever they end up. I mean, I am very
To
much
have
in
student
favor of.
loans?
I do not. No, um, it's another instance where of how privileged I was. My grandparents had saved enough money to send both me and my brother to higher education. So no,
That's awesome.
I never had to get student loans. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I'm completely in favor of it. So, but the video will be a little bit more because like there are instances where Sarah Dane is here. What are you talking about?
Oh, Sarah.
Wow. I wouldn't start the show without Dana. If it's a me and Dana show, I'm not going to start it with just me. I'm going to wait for Dana. Okay.
And then blame me for us
I
being late.
don't give a shit how late it is. Yeah, then I'll totally blame you. I'll throw you under the bus in a second. But
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Oh, come on, Steve. You know I'm not afraid of a bus.
I like it under the bus. I don't know what everybody complains about.
I'll come out the other end, get up, and brush myself off.
Stand up and be like, yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, let's do the show.
Higher axles.
Yeah. You should get that thing up on a jack and look at it because I mean,
It was me. Sorry.
I'm not a mechanic, but I'm pretty sure you have some issues there. Uh, yeah. So, but that'll be for Wednesday, and then I also I haven't I started writing a little tiny bit of the next Batman video. I mean, just like literally just like the first paragraph because I've had it in my head for weeks, like how I want to start it out, and
Okay.
I went ahead today and I read the first comic book issue that I'm going to talk about in it, that I'm going to reference in it. I went back and read that for the first time in a long time, and I said, well, as long as I've read it, I might as well open a new document in my Google Drive and write down the beginning of the script. So I did that, but I probably won't touch that for another couple weeks because this next Wednesday is the where do we go from here. The Wednesday after that is another Star Trek video.
And the Wednesday after that.
And the Wednesday after that, I think is going to be the Batman video.
Okay. What's the next Star Trek video?
The next Star Trek video is I was going to do something else, but I saw people talking about this on Twitter, so I decided to change my subject. So it's going to be about swearing in Star Trek.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. And how some people are just some Star Trek fans are such fucking babies about it. So I'm pro swearing in Star Trek. I'll put I'm not anti swearing in Star Trek. I'll put it that way. I'm not like I don't necessarily recommend. I don't think it needs it. I don't think it's like something that we should be cramming in there. But at the same time, if
also the vibe on most Star Trek shows is or most movie shows, whatever, the vibe in the tone is more. I would say like it seems more professional than say Firefly. So there's that era of we are doing our jobs and we're members of Starfleet.
Oh,
we're
sure.
officers.
Yeah.
And so they've kind of got, they all got sticks up their butts.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, that
yeah, it's a more professional environment. Yeah. Charles Chapman, I was just thinking that. I mean, that's the thing that I'll probably mention this in the video. I haven't even started writing that video yet. But one of the things I'll certainly mention is how pissy I get about made up swear words in stuff like Firefly and Battlestar Galactica. And you know, I would. It's like, are you seriously going to tell me that you would rather hear a character in a sci-fi show quote unquote swear by saying some dumb made up baby talk than hearing them drop like an occasional shit or an f bomb? Like, I just, people could. I'm when the first. I think it was Star Trek Discovery, the first season of Star Trek Discovery. One of the characters said "fuck," and it was like the first "fuck" in the history of Star Trek. And they could do it because it's on CBS or now Paramount Plus, you know, the streaming service, and they just have more leeway than they would have
Mm-hmm.
on a network show.
Yeah.
And so they decided, okay, we'll just have a character say the F word. And it wasn't even like in an angry way. Like, she said, it was a really charming scene because it was Tilly, and she's like sort of a science slash math nerd. And at the time she was a cadet, so she was like the young character, and they were working on some problem and they had come up with a solution to it, and she was excited, and she said, "You guys, this is so fucking cool." And then she
It
kind of,
is
and
precious.
yeah, it's precious. And she kind of, and she's standing there with her boss, with Lieutenant Stamets, and she realizes, oh shit, I'm on duty and I swore in front of my boss. And she kind of gets nervous for a second and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he looks at her and smiles and says, "No, you're right, cadet. This is fucking cool." And it's
Aww.
just it's a wonderful scene. It's a really beautiful, charming exchange. But because they said the F word, there were some people in the fan base that were like, "Oh, I can't
Woo!
believe they were swearing in Star Trek." And I'm like, you say fuck all you want, as long as I don't have to hear fucking Goram or Rutten or any of the fucking dumb baby talk that they crammed into people's mouths in Firefly. You know what I mean? I just, like, if you can't swear, then don't. If you can't do it, don't do it. You know? Um,
I will say I like it's interesting because is it Battlestar Galactica that uses frack?
Frack, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think,
I
yeah,
like I like there are some of the ones in Firefly that I'm just like that sound um chintzy to me.
yeah, yeah,
But both I'd forgotten about Rutten until you brought that one up. But Goriam and Rutten,
yeah,
they fit the like I was saying about Star Trek, you know, the professionalism. They fit the tone, that sort of space western feel.
I mean, I'm not. Yeah, they do seem like the kind of people that would swear. You know, but like,
No, just those particular words.
I can't get behind a show about grown-ups, made for grown-ups, where people talk like babies and we're just supposed to overlook it. I mean, especially in when they do the movie, where it's like, you know, I mean, I know they couldn't have them. They didn't want to have them cussing like a Quentin Tarantino movie. I get that they wanted like a PG-13, but you don't have to have them saying, you know, the silly made up baby talk that you know. And I mean, and to be fair, in shows that I like a lot better than Firefly, when they have done that, it's also gotten on my nerves. Like, I didn't really care for it in Battlestar Galactica. I didn't care for it in Babylon 5, and they do it in Babylon 5 too. In Babylon 5, it's frag, you know, like, frag, so fragging lootly. I'm like, oh my, give me a break. Just let them talk like grown-ups. Like, if they can't, if the network won't let them swear, then just don't write swear word. It just, you know, it just, ooh, it gets on my nerves. You know,
You know what's gonna happen now.
what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?
I'm gonna use some made up swear words, and it's gonna be good, and you're gonna like it.
No, I'm going to tolerate it because it's you.
No, I'm gonna do such an amazing job that you'll be like, and you just won't say anything, but I'll know from the sigh and the extended silence that what you really mean is, Dana, you were right.
I would say it if I felt it. You know that.
It would take a minute
Um,
though.
I'd
You'd have
have
to
to
do the mismentioned
I'd
face
have to
first.
swallow it. I mean, oh,
Yeah, you'd be like,
Dana, you were
I've
right.
always been so fond of you.
Yes, really, Miss Minchin. I didn't know that.
Of course you
Sarah
didn't, because I'm lying.
Sarah asked about Tarantino's Star Trek movie, which I don't think that's going to happen at this point, but I think it probably would have been at least a little sweary. I mean, honestly, why would you hire Quentin Tarantino if you don't want Quentin Tarantino to do the Quentin Tarantino thing? It just doesn't make sense, you know.
Well, maybe you want Quentin Tarantino to do a different Quentin Tarantino.
I mean, now I think Tarantino is talented enough that I think if he did say I'll do a Star Trek movie and the studio said okay, but no no fucks and shits, or and I think he could still do it and make a good movie. Like, I don't think he's a good filmmaker because he writes swears into his dialogue. But the joke was, I mean, when I heard that Tarantino was even that was even a consideration that he might do a Star Trek movie. Of course, the first joke I made, along with a lot of other people who got there around the same time, is, "Oh, great, we're going to get the first use of the N-word in a Star Trek movie," because Quentin does have kind of a problem with that, unfortunately. But you know, although, do you know? And this is a kind of a little bit of Star Trek trivia. The N-word has been used in Star Trek before. And can you guess what? Can you guess what version of Star Trek it was heard in?
Well, so it was heard.
It was, yeah, it was spoken by a character. Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll go with original series.
No, no. Oh wow. Oh man. No. Well, but
dude, you're asking me about Star Trek.
It was Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
Although I will say, if it had been used in the original series, it totally would have been Dr. McCoy who would have said it. Because you can't. He's from Mississippi, for God's sake. Even in the 23rd century, there's people. There's white people. There's white people. If there's white people from Mississippi in the 23rd century, they're saying the N-word. Maybe they're only saying it when they're around other white people who they know won't care. But you can't tell me that Dr. McCoy has never said the N-word. But anyway, yes, and Sarah, yeah, it's said in Far Beyond the Stars in Deep Space Nine, which is an episode we will not get to for a while. But it was actually said by a black character, Jimmy, who appears the same as Jake. It's you'll understand when you watch the episode. It's like a vision that Sisko has. But
so what season is it in?
6. So it'll be a while.
It'll be a while.
But I mean, or we could just watch it for the hell of it. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. But yeah, it's Sisko has a vision where he experiences life as a black man in New York City in the 1950s. And one of the lines, and Jimmy is like this sort of young friend of his who's kind of a street hustler type of guy, and he's kind of ribbing Benny, the Sisko character, for trying to be too respectable and trying to get the white man's respect. And he says, it doesn't matter what we do, we're never going to be anything but N-words to them. And it's a great episode, and it's one of the, I think it's the first episode of Star Trek that just flat out deals with racism. It doesn't do it metaphorically. It doesn't do it with aliens. It's just like, no, this is literally about racism.
But also aliens. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, sort of, but also aliens. But anyway, so shall we talk about the Likert scale?
Let's go to the thing.
Yeah.
Y'all, did you folks, did you get your your surveys out?
Get your homework out. We're going to go over your homework.
Now, class.
You're the teacher. You should take the lead. But yeah, we're going
to put the thingy on the spot.
It's on there right now. We're going to talk first. We're going to talk about item 8 on the survey, and which is everyone in America has equal opportunities to be successful.
Not that everyone in America is equally successful, which is obviously false.
But has equal opportunities. And and as always, it's A, strongly agree, B, somewhat agree, C, somewhat disagree, D, strongly disagree. And
so if you have your answers, or if you just want to answer now, you can just put that in the chat.
Yeah, if you didn't take it way back when we started, you can
or if you've lost your work, or if the dog ate it or something like that.
Yeah. Or if you didn't or if you didn't write it down, but you just remember what you said. I said D. I said D.
Well, apparently Sarah believes that she said D, even though we both know that she doesn't actually have her survey anymore.
She's faking. She's bluffing her way through.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm calling you out too.
Get to the principal's office.
So did anybody not pick D?
Yeah, that would be a shorter conversation. Did anybody not pick D? Because
Yeah.
here's the thing. I mean, you say like, oh, good, Sarah, she found her homework. Good for you.
She
Uh,
says she found her
that's
homework.
true. Can't. There's no way to verify that. Um, but no, as you said, if the question had been, "Do people have equal opportunity?" That's obviously false. But to me, this is obviously false too. I
Yeah,
mean,
this one was sort of a gimme.
yeah, it's
I
like
think
if
part of it is some of the others are just like, well, what do you mean by that? I got to figure that sucker out, and then we
yeah.
can talk about it.
I mean, the thing is like it doesn't. There are so many different categories that you can use to slice things up. Like you could say, well, obviously, people of color don't have the same opportunities as white people, and if you don't believe that, I don't know what to tell you. Obviously, poor people don't have the same opportunities as rich
That's just
people
because
or
they don't
even
work as
middle
hard as
class
you.
people. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's completely in their control. They're poor because
Absolutely,
deep down, they just want to
they
be
should
poor.
just pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Exactly. Says all the people who misunderstand the original intent of that saying.
I will just point out that none of my boots have straps.
Well, no, they have laces, or they just fit snug, or I mean, like
Zippers.
zippers.
Most of mine have
Yeah.
zippers, actually.
Who straps on their boots? But yeah, I mean, it's obvious that not everyone, even if you phrase it in terms of opportunity rather
Yeah.
than, I mean, I guess maybe if you're talking about some kind of theoretical opportunity, maybe, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's completely impractical. Like you could say like, well, I mean, it's possible for a person born into poverty to become a millionaire. It's happened before. Well, yeah, but that's
But what I will say is when we have conversations about this, in terms of like if we, I'm really hoping I get to do this again,
yeah.
with students because I'll be able to have people, since we're going back face to face with everybody, as
Yeah.
far as I know.
You'll be able to have actually people in the classroom to talk about it.
Well, and yeah, enough people to have and I won't have to worry about teaching remotely, so everybody can be part of the conversation. But we'll talk about, because one of the things that I have them do is I give them a mixed up series of papers that have the names, the photocopies of the papers that have the names taken off.
Uh-huh.
So what I do is I collect all of them. They do them in colored pencil, and then I collect all of them, run them through the photocopier once, snip the names off of them, run those through the photocopier, and then that's the set that I hand out. Everybody gets one. So you don't have one with they're not cut, but you have a full piece of paper,
Yeah.
but the name has been taken off, and then everybody also you get your original back. So anyway, so you have somebody's, and all it's got is a bunch of circles on it. So there's no writing in the answers. You can't tell by the handwriting.
Yeah.
And but we just look at how many we have of each response, and it's a nice visual because I have them go to the 4 different corners of the room. If your paper says A, B, C, or D, A is
Right.
this corner, B is this corner, and I'll reinforce that A is strongly agree, B is somewhat agree, C is somewhat disagree, and D is strongly disagree. And we just sort of look at the proportions,
Right.
how that.
Just see how the group as a whole feels about it.
Yes. And so for this one, typically I get C's and D's. And so we talk about that, about, how the proportions come out. And so I've specifically structured this question to lean that way. Jay, that's one of the reasons that it is sort of a gimme. So and we talk about the difference between saying people in America or most people, and then of course the difference between most and many. So, most is more of a thing. It's like, okay, I know this is it more than half? Most means more than half, right? Most people.
You would, yeah,
greater
usually
part, one would think.
the greater part, yeah.
But of course, if you subdivide it down, you can say, if you divide people into 4 groups, and you have the largest group is, group A, is that that's still not most people necessarily. It's a larger group than any of the other groups. It's a plurality, but it's not a majority. And so we talk about some of that
Right.
as well. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we talk about the way there's a lot of this and the way that things are phrased. We also talk about after, I don't know if it was after the 2012 or 2016 elections, or if it was right before them, when Georgia made some changes to polling stations. And one article reported that the changes extended the average time to the poll, or the average distance to the polling station.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doubled it for Black people, and marginally increased it for white people because they reduced the number of polling stations. And then a second article, the headline was that despite these changes, white people still had to travel further than Black people did to get to their polling station. So it's it depends on how these numbers are phrased.
Yeah.
And which is because urban Georgia will have more polling stations because there's more people there.
There's more people, and they're close.
And
more, yeah.
in Georgia, rural residents skew white, and metropolitan residents skew Black. So
now that is interesting.
Based on these numbers, I mean, as a rural resident, you're going to have you drive further to go anywhere.
Right, because and you probably don't have as much public transportation. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about the way that they're talking about the same thing, but they phrase it in different ways, and the information, because it's presented differently, is interpreted differently. So it's really some really interesting conversations about that.
What about Jay's question in the chat? Do you think would the answers change if the question was phrased in terms of most people have the same opportunities instead of everybody has the same opportunities?
I don't think so.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Just because they're just, I mean, the people have such widely different experiences in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, it's like I was saying about like how there are so many ways that people sort of are divided up. I mean, like if you come at the question in terms of racial privilege, you could say like, well, maybe if we say, let's just for the sake of argument, let's say, well, most people in the United States are white people because white people are the majority of the population, or at least white people are the largest plurality in the population. So all white people would have the same opportunities, but that's not true because there are white people of different income levels, white people of different education levels.
That question, that phrasing of the statement takes out the word there's a difference between equality and sameness, because like you could also say that people in Nebraska and people in Ohio, they might have similar levels of opportunity, I mean, given the demographics, but they're not going to have the same opportunities, because the opportunities in Nebraska are going to be different ones than the opportunities in Ohio. So you want to be, that's why I've been through like 8 or 9 different revisions of this sucker, because I want to be very deliberate about what I'm getting students to think about.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I guess it also depends on
Charles Chapman. I think that one would give me more variance in the responses received. But in particular, what I wanted to highlight with this one was that I'm not looking for variance. I'm looking for commonality and talking about why we tended to agree more on certain responses than on others. I mean, because sometimes I get agreement that I'm not expecting, and sometimes it varies class by class. And then sometimes I'll get agreement that I'm expecting, like here, or disagreement that I'm definitely expecting. Sometimes they surprise me.
Yeah. And it depends on how pedantic you want to get with, the meaning of same opportunities, because like you could easily say like, well, people who live in Baltimore have more of an opportunity to go see an Orioles game than I do because I live an hour away and they live in the same town as the ballpark. I mean, it's like, like if you want to,
You
depending
know,
on how,
I don't want it to be quite that obvious, because I want to talk about the reasons that we agree on this prompt and the reasons we disagree on that prompt, and talk about. So Sarah's saying, you might as not well ask, which is kind of not the point with this one. It's to talk about why we agree here and why we don't agree here, and look at the phrasing. What causes us to agree?
right,
Is it based on the meaning, or is it based on the phrasing?
right,
Based on, what makes this, why do we agree so well on this one?
yeah,
And that's what the conversation becomes. It goes beyond just the prompt itself.
right. Speaking of the prompt, let's take a look at the next one,
Let's
which
do.
which is number 9, and it says, if and this as we were talking before we went on the air, this is very relevant to our book.
Uh-huh.
If someone disrespects you or takes advantage of you, you should get back at them or they'll try it again. And I said C for this one. I wasn't quite as certain about it, but generally speaking, I think this is probably a bad idea, or at least it's maybe a bad idea more often than not, but I don't want to completely slam the door on it because there are times when I think, it is important to kind of put your foot down and make sure that if somebody does take liberties with you, make sure that they know that they can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's also sort of like there's the whole idea. I do think there is validity to the idea of like escalation and the cycle of violence, and sometimes perhaps
Oh,
even
Sarah, now that's a really interesting answer.
yeah, sometimes and perhaps most times, I don't know, like it might be the better thing to turn the other cheek, so to speak. Um, but I do think there are times when it's completely valid to stomp somebody. But I don't know if that is in general the way you should go.
Well, I
So
said D.
you said don't,
For
yeah,
for two reasons. First of all, my preference is to respond with, the way you respond to somebody, causing problems for you, is to say, you identify the behavior and tell them not to do it again. So that's the yeah, Charles, exactly. It depends on, so that's part of it. The first response might not, everybody gets, if it's me, if it's a problem for me, I'd say, here's what you did. I didn't like it. Don't do it again. Um, and
yeah,
then the other quibble that I have it with it is the idea of getting back. Whereas in my mind, I frame it as, and it touches on that in the question, that you don't want them to do it again, but you tell them not to do it again. And if they do it again, you arrange things without necessarily getting back at them to where they can't do that again.
yeah,
And in some cases, it's, if it involves someone I care about who is being placed in danger by something that somebody has done, then I will do whatever I can to make sure that the person that I care about is not hurt. And that's not because I'm getting back at this person. There's not the sense of revenge, but it may create escalation, but it's not vengeful.
right.
It is,
It's
I
out
am
of
preventing,
yeah,
I can tell that this is, causing problems, and I am going to make sure that you know that this is a bad idea. It's not personal and it's not business. It is simply protective. Um,
yeah. I I sort of my philosophy is a version of what Sarah says in terms of giving people the benefit of the doubt. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt at first. Like basically, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt once, and then if you keep fucking up or keep fucking with me,
well, yeah,
then we move into stage two. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I'm not. I don't go straight to strike back.
Yeah.
My first reaction is, okay, is it possible for me just to get rid of this person? Just to remove this person from my life. you know, so I just don't have to see them anymore. And if it's not possible to do that for one reason or another, then we might, have a talk and be like, okay, look, if you don't cut this out, uh, it's then we are not going to get along, and it's not going to be good for you. So I wouldn't jump straight to somebody.
I love the way you phrase that. We are not going to get along. It's not going to be good for you.
Well, part of that is, I mean, and to be completely frank, part of that is me also not wanting to write any checks that my ass can't cash. Like, I don't want to necessarily like physically threaten someone, because you never know, they might be able to kick your ass. So there's
Yeah.
all kinds of reasons why you don't want to jump straight to that. But and there might be other situations where you don't. I mean, it's not always a good idea to physically threaten someone. So it might, but in the sense of, we're not going to be able to get along, and you're not going to be able to just push me around. I'm not going to stand for it, and it's not going to go well for you. So you can either change your behavior and we can try to get along, or it can be the other way. But it's one of those
No,
two
yeah, Jay
options.
is exactly making the point that I was attempting to make. And then, of
Yeah.
course, Charles Chaplin bringing us right back around to Star Trek.
Yes, of course. The line must be drawn here.
Although I will say, I was just kind of glancing at the chat, and I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. How is he going to make them gay?
Oh,
Make them
pay.
pay. Okay, because I kind of glanced at it and I saw that, that dangling string there, that stem, and I was like, wait, oh, okay, yeah, that's the line.
You know what I love about that scene is Picard in that scene goes from "we've evolved beyond the need for revenge" to melodramatically swearing revenge to renouncing that and realizing that revenge is a bad idea, all in the space of like 3 minutes. I mean, it's such a great scene, and he just speeds through this. I mean, so much emotion, like literally he gives this big, like, and the line must be drawn in, I will make them pay for what they've done, and then he has like a moment of clarity and he's like, oh shit, never mind.
Oopsie.
It's such a great scene, but my god, it's preposterous. It's like he goes through like a week's worth of processing in like 5 minutes. It's great.
Necessarily, I mean, he's been doing the processing, and now now it just comes out.
Yeah.
This is just the release.
So yeah, shall we talk about the chapter?
Well, I think that's what we're here to do, ain't it?
Yes. I just didn't know if you wanted to keep, if you had anything else you wanted to touch on as far as the survey, or
Not really.
okay. Well, we're on chapter 6 of The Other Westmore, and we start this scene with, it's a really interesting, it's a little bit of a fake out, because the first scene, we're in the other Wes's story, but this first scene is not about the other Wes.
Mm-hmm.
It's about uh, his friend Woody, who is graduating from high school in Baltimore, and it's about the graduation ceremony. He's there; they're all in their robes, and they're lining up and walking across the stage to get their diplomas. And there's a little bit of talk about how the graduation rate in the state of Maryland is actually pretty high compared to the national average, but the graduation rate in the city of Baltimore is pretty bad. It's 38%. And so like out of the freshman class that entered this high school, it's just a small fraction of them that actually made it all the way through to graduate. There's a line in here where he describes it as the graduation ceremony took much less time than it should have, because there were no DK Silo. You can come in. We're literally just starting to talk about the chapter. So yeah, you can join. But yeah, so Woody was Wes's pal, and he made it through. And they talk. We actually hear a little bit about you
Some
know,
of the others.
some of the others, like some of the others who didn't make it, and some of the, and they didn't all drop out because they got involved in drugs or whatever. um we hear about Woody's friend Damon, who
Bye,
dropped out.
Sarah.
Oh, bye, Sarah. We heard about Woody's friend Damon, who had to drop out because his mom got sick, and they didn't have anybody else to, as you keep saying over, it's like a common theme in this book. They had the importance of the support system.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently Woody's family, or Damon's family, didn't have that support system, and he had to drop out of school to take care of his mom. um, and he didn't get to graduate. And we also learn that by this point Wes has dropped out. So but I thought that was an interesting way to open the chapter, by showing us a scene that Wes should have been in
Mm-hmm.
but wasn't. To really emphasize how things have gone for him. Um, and then we move to Wes, to the other Wes, and he is still working the drug trade. He's now what is called a lieutenant, which means he's not actually on the corner selling the drugs himself anymore. He has people that work for him, but he's sort of in the middle of the organization. He still reports to people higher than him, but he also has people that works for him. He's the head of a crew, and the chapter talks about how when your crew basically is your family. And for a lot of the kids who work the crew, like, they don't have strong family support at home, and they don't really have friends outside of the crew, so the crew becomes like a de facto family. And they watch each other's backs and look out for each other, and end up spending most of their time together. um, and we Wes and Wes has a baby now. Alicia had her baby, and Alicia is living with her mom, and Wes is staying with his aunt Nicey, who is, we're told that she's strict, and she has really, firm sort of house rules. And she tells Wes when he moves in, either you're going to go to school or you're going to get a job, while you're living here. And Wes gets
Mm-hmm.
around that by just, you know,
Looking for a job.
looking for, yeah, his excuse for he tells her, well, I'm looking for a job. And usually he's home when she's not home. And when she's home, he's out supposedly looking for a job, but actually doing his real job,
Doing
which
his
is
job.
being a drug dealer. Yeah. um
Now, Charles, I'm curious. You said you hated the line. Many in the audience had thought the day would never come, but all were happy it did. What makes you hate that line so much? I'm very curious. Anyway, we can go on
yeah, that
because
isn't, yeah, I would assume that they were happy that it, I mean, like, I hated, oh, as we were talking earlier.
yeah, yeah,
I
we mentioned
I
it.
I hated my graduation, but that doesn't mean I was sorry that it came. I was very sorry that I was graduating. I was very happy that I was graduating, but I just, the actual ceremony was bullshit. Uh, you know,
I don't. I actually do not remember my high school graduation at all. I mean,
I,
I
I
know I graduated, but
yeah, obviously
don't
they
remember it
let you in
happening.
college. You must have graduated.
So yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, and I thought this was, I'm usually interested in procedural and process, you know. Um, and I like the little glimpses we get of how the drug operation works, the different levels, the different jobs, like, um,
yeah. The way they have different
the
roles.
different roles. Yeah, there's the corner boys, there's the hitters, who are the ones who count the money. There's the housemen, who are in charge of actually making and distributing the drugs to the people who actually sell them on the street. And then there's the muscle, and hopefully their role is obvious. They kind of look out for everybody and make sure that everybody, is safe, and that other rival crews aren't horning in on their territory, or they're the muscle, they're the enforcers. um and we are told that Wes is actually really good at this, that he's a good manager of his crew. And I had the thought of, it's not that Wes didn't have aptitudes, or didn't have skills. It's that he just was denied the opportunities
Mm-hmm.
to pursue them, in a more legitimate way, you know. because we're told that he's really good at being a drug dealer, and that there are legitimate skills involved in that. You know, he has to manage people, he has to keep track of money, he has to keep track of product. You know, he has to, and yeah, there's other stuff too. But I mean, there are a lot of things he has to do that people have to do when they're doing a legitimate job, when they're, you know, managing a store or running a legitimate business. And
Yeah.
he does that, and apparently he's good at it.
Um, Rose, I'm not entirely sure if the other West would have done great at military school because he does not do well with other people telling him what to do.
Yeah, I don't think the other West would have done. I mean, we see
Um,
we see later on how West the author is doing, but I mean, I don't think the other
yeah,
West would have done great at military. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who needs structure. I feel like at this point in his life, he instinctively rebels against it too hard.
especially if he sees it as we say non-justified hierarchy. Like he can deal with it in the drug biz because he knows that they need that sort of hierarchy to keep to keep things moving.
Yeah, and because
Yeah,
he's getting paid,
yeah, he's getting something out of it
he's doing
besides
really
just
well
like
within that
follow the rules.
hierarchy.
He's
Yeah,
he's getting money,
yeah,
like now, not just the promise of money in the future, like with education,
right.
or the hope for money in the future, or self-awareness. He's getting money, period.
Yeah. So we follow Wes to Dundee Village, which is where he used to live. He doesn't live there anymore, but he still
Mm-hmm.
goes back there because he has people selling drugs there for him. Because he has found that if he mostly sells drugs actually in Baltimore City now.
Right.
Dundee Village is outside of the city in Baltimore County, but Wes has discovered that you can sell the same drugs you sell in the city out in the
Mm-hmm.
county, and you can charge more for them. So he has what it's described as a little operation. Apparently, he has just a few people who work for him who sell drugs out in the county because they can sell them for more out there. And he goes out to check on that crew in Dundee Village, and it's time for him to get moving because he has plans that night. He's supposed to go out on a date with a girl, not Alicia, another girl. Um, and he's about to leave when this guy walks up to him and the people in his crew, and asks if they know where he can buy some rocks. And there's just something off about the guy. And again, we get this little insight into the how things work because we're shared the tip offs that dealers have that inform them that something might not be right. And the tip offs are, if a person looks unfamiliar or out of place, they're probably a cop. If a person you just saw get arrested is suddenly back and is trying to buy from you, they're probably doing it for a cop. If a person is usually a dime bag customer and now they're trying to buy a brick, they're probably doing it for the cops. And if someone is just talking wrong, if they're using lingo that people on the street wouldn't actually use, like, for instance, do you guys know where I can buy some rocks? They're probably a cop. So Wes has warning flags going off for this guy. He's like, I can tell that this isn't a right guy and I should just leave this guy alone. And at first, that's what he does. At first, he tells the guy no, and the guy walks away and Wes walks away and everything seems fine. But Wes just can't let it go because he starts thinking, well, I mean, that guy probably isn't a cop, right? I mean, there's the warning signs and stuff, but that's just being careful. It doesn't automatically mean he's a cop. And if I did sell to that guy, the money I make from this one sale, I could just use that for my date tonight and I wouldn't have to spend my own money. I would just, yeah, I'd be set for the night. So he turns around. First, he takes out the drugs he's going to sell to this guy. He takes them and he stashes them in a phone booth. He stashes them in the coin return in a phone booth. And then he goes back, he catches up to the guy and he turns him around and he says, hey, listen. And he tries to put some distance between himself and the crime he's committing, but
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think what he does makes any difference, legally speaking. But he says, "Look, I forget who told me this. Ironclad alibi there." He says, "I forget who told me this, but if you give me $20, you can go over to that phone booth, and what you want is in that phone booth." So the guy says, "Gee, thanks, Mister," and he hands him $20 and, walks away. And Wes is like, okay, cool, got away with that one. But then as Wes is walking away, all of a sudden he hears people coming up behind him, telling him to stop and put his hands up. He looks around and all of a sudden he's surrounded by, I think they say there's 10 cops altogether. There's about 10 cops that have surrounded him, and he is busted. And he's telling them, I didn't do anything wrong. What are you doing? What am I being charged with? And he knows, it's obvious that he's caught and he's screwed
Yes.
up. But he's doing the play dumb thing where it's like, I didn't do anything. Why don't, what do you know what I mean? But there's
In
no,
case they don't actually know, in case it's not a sting.
I guess that's it. I guess maybe he's thinking like, just in case they don't have me dead to rights,
Yeah.
I'll deny everything. But I mean, it seems pretty obvious. They said they mentioned a cop that was hiding in the bushes who like stood up. So I'm pretty sure they saw the whole thing. Like they saw him stash the drugs in the phone. They saw everything.
Yeah.
But just in
Oh,
case.
it's bothering me.
So yeah, Wes is in some trouble
Again.
again.
Um, yeah, and this is shortly after he's got out of the detention center for shooting the guy.
That's true. We didn't talk about that. Thanks you for reminding me.
We
Yeah.
didn't?
So at the end of the
Oh,
last
we didn't talk
chapter,
about how he just gotten out.
yeah, at the
I
end
was
of
like,
the
we talked about that last time.
yeah, at the end of the last chapter, he shot a guy, and it was kind of a cliffhanger. In this chapter, we find out that the guy was okay. He got shot in the shoulder, so he lived. He didn't get charged with
Okay, he
murder.
didn't die.
He didn't die. He got so Wes got charged with attempted
He
murder.
still got shot.
He still got shot. I'm sure it wasn't the best day of his life, but he's not dead. And so Wes got
It's
charged.
fine.
What are you complaining about? You're alive. Oh, my shoulder. Shut up. Um,
Ow!
but
You're gonna be fine. Ow!
does this bug you? Does this bug you? Does this bug you? Does it hurt when I do that? Does it hurt when I do that? Does it hurt when I do that? Does it hurt when I do that?
Have you how much have you watched House?
I think I've seen all of it,
Okay,
but
so
it's
you
been a
remember
while. But it's been a while.
you were the guy. It hurts when I do this. Ow. 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 And House is like, does it hurt when I do this? Ow. Did you give House the stoner with the broken finger? Yeah.
Oh, I love the I think he's having, it's a conversation he's having with Wilson, and I forget how they even get on the subject, but they're talking about relationships or something, and House says, you see
Wes?
this, Wes says, you see what I'm thinking about. House says, he says, see, this kind of thing is why I always try to, I never schedule like one-on-one encounters with women. I always try to go for a 4G, because that way, if somebody cancels, you're still having a three-way. And if two people cancel, you're still having sex. And even if three people cancel, it's just like the way he sort of like looks up at the ceiling, like, yeah, you know what, that might not even be so bad.
Then I don't have to deal with anybody.
And yeah, that was one of the clinic cases. Yeah.
Okay,
But yeah, so yeah, Wes got charged with attempted murder, but he was tried in juvie court, and he did 6 months. So that's one of the reasons why he didn't finish high school, is that he
yeah,
missed 6 months of school, and then by the time he did go back to school after that, but he quit soon after because he was like 2 years behind everybody else his age,
yeah,
and it just wasn't happening. So he ended
yeah.
up quitting. But yeah. So now he's arrested again, and I haven't read ahead, but I presume he's going to do some pretty steep time for this as well. Cops don't usually. I mean, when you sell drugs to a cop, you're usually in a lot of trouble after that. That's the impression I get.
Yeah.
But we also, now we jump to Wes the author's story,
Mm-hmm.
and at first he's doing pretty well. He's in his second year of military school. He's a sophomore now. And he has really he's really taken to it. I mean, we saw in the last chapter that he hated it and he tried to run away, and it was just, he didn't want to be there. He called his mom and tried to get her to let him come home, and he was not having a good time at all. But now it's a year later, and he is a platoon leader, and he's actually, I think he says he's the youngest platoon leader in the school, the youngest senior non-commissioned officer, he says. And actually, this is 3 years later, not 1 year later. But he's really grown into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he, it's brought about a change in him, in his whole demeanor. Like he answers questions with yes sir and yes ma'am, or no sir and no ma'am. He dresses snappy. He walks around with his head held high, and he has a lot more confidence, and it's really been good for him. And he actually likes it. He's adjusted to it and really likes it. And there's a line that that struck with me, as far as like why he is why he's doing so well with it. Um, and it's near the beginning of his section, where he says, and he mentions Captain Hill, or Cadet Captain
Mm-hmm.
Hill, who he was supposed to go talk to at the end of the last chapter. Captain Hill doesn't appear in this chapter. I guess he's already graduated by now, but
Yeah.
he apparently was like a role model and a mentor for Wes. Um, and he writes, quote, "With the support of people like Cadet Captain Hill and others in my chain of command and on the faculty, I'd actually started to enjoy military school. They made it clear that they cared if I succeeded, and eventually so did I." And I think that is really, really important. Not just having a support system, but realizing that the people around you, both the people like sort of that are your peers, and also the people that you are accountable to, they care if you succeed. They care about you. They want to help you. They want you to do well. That is really, really important, just emotionally. Not, I mean, it's important practically in terms of the support you have, but just emotionally, it means so
Yeah.
much to know that there are people in your life that, like, they actually give a shit about you. And that can, for someone in this kind of a situation, that can be transformative, and that's what he gets.
Yes. But then a little bit later, he meets up with Sean, his plebe brother.
Right.
And we have the sentence, "We were among the few still at the school from our plebe class."
Right. Apparently, there is a lot of
Attrition.
attrition. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So sometimes it doesn't work for everybody.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
and
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting that he also said the financial strain was lower, because he also says, when the school gave me academic and later athletic scholarships, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That
He eventually becomes
he was able to pull, to start working in class hard enough to get academic scholarships, and the athletic scholarships came later.
that
Even
is
though in a couple
interesting. Yeah.
paragraphs we find out that he's doing really well on the basketball team, and he's starting to get noticed by colleges. So
Yes.
But at the military school, he first got his academic scholarships. So that was interesting for me.
That is interesting. I didn't take particular note of that, but you're right. He does specify he got academic scholarships first. I wonder if maybe like that was a source of motivation for him. Like maybe once
Possibly,
he's
or it may also be that like because he says he was a starter on the Valley Forge basketball team, the only sophomore on the starting squad that year. And the first sophomore starter in over 5 years. So 3 years earlier, he would have been in 7th grade. So they might not have given athletic scholarships to 7th graders. He might have only
That's
had the
true.
option for in like middle school, the little junior version of they only have until he makes like the starting team for
That's true.
basketball. I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but
Yeah.
that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I mean, it's something to consider.
Yeah.
Um, why it works for Wes when, and that's not saying that the students who don't return to military school aren't successful. They may be
Right.
going home because they've sort of turned things around, and they go back and to the school back at home, and they're successful there. They may have, achieved success in other ways, but
Yeah. It could also be that their parents couldn't afford to send them there
mm-hmm.
anymore. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons other than washing out that they could have
Yeah.
not,
Well,
made it to the end.
but that also means that they didn't have the financial support network that West did, or the access to the scholarships.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, and he tells us about a time, a recent visit when he went back to the Bronx, and he visited with his uncle Howard. Because now that he's a basketball star, he can't. He knows that it's impractical. He knows that, you know, the odds, even if you're a great player, the odds of getting to be a professional basketball player, especially in the NBA, are
Yeah.
the odds are not with you. You know, but he still can't help it. Like he can't help but dream about. He mentions like I want to, being the first round draft pick for the Knicks. You know what I mean? Like he can't help but have
Bless
that
his little
dream.
heart.
Yeah. So he goes and visits his Uncle Howard, and Uncle Howard kind of gives him a little, splash of cold water in the face. And he goes through, he says, look, you are getting pretty good. And if you did make it to the NBA, that would be great because then none of us would have to worry. Right. But do the math, and then he goes through it. He says they only draft 60 players into the NBA draft every year. There are 341 Division One schools. They each have 13 players on the roster. That makes 4,433 college players who could declare eligibility for the NBA draft. And that's not even counting the Division Two and the Division Three schools or the international players. So basically, you cannot count on getting a
Yeah.
professional basketball career. Like you have to have a backup plan. You have to get your education. You can't just be like, well, I'm a great basketball player. I'll just do that. It's probably not going to happen.
Well, but when I remember when I first read this, um, those numbers don't even include Division two or three players or international players. I forgot that he was talking about collegiate level there.
College, yeah, yeah.
And so I was thinking, he doesn't have the NBA is not the only professional ball association
Oh, that's
for
true.
basketball.
That's
you
true.
know and there are a number of other ways that you can make basketball a career without playing in the NBA. So anyway, so I was just like, yeah, he can play internationally easily,
Right.
but
But
that takes him away from his home and family,
yeah.
and does not pay nearly as well. Let's be honest.
And yeah, I was just going to say, and also you're probably not going to get rich doing that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and famous, of course. Let's not
Yeah.
forget that's
Oh,
part
yeah.
that's part of the lore too.
So Wes, back at military school, Wes, he gets some mail, and some of it is mail from colleges, and one of the pieces of mail he gets is a letter from his friend Justin from the Bronx, who went to the Riverdale school with him. And there's another line in here that stuck with me where he's remembering how one day at Riverdale, where Wes was kind of a ne'er do well, one of the deans had pulled Justin aside and said, "Look, Justin, you're a good kid. You need to keep away from Wes, or you are going to end up going nowhere just like him." And Wes was 12 at the time. And he says it amazed Justin how easily they would write off a 12-year-old. And that stuck with me because sometimes you forget, like when you're talking about like troubled teens or troubled kids, or there is some. And I think we all kind of do it from time to time without realizing it. There's such a finality to it, you know, and you have to remember, like, we're talking about children, we're talking about
Yeah,
teenagers. Their lives have barely even begun. Like there's still time for them to turn this around if we give them the chance and if we help them. And that phrasing of, the way some people will just write off a 12-year-old. Like that's a really strong way to put that, and that really stuck with me.
Yeah. I remember looking at some of the pictures when they're young.
Oh, of the Wesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's a kid.
That's a child. Yeah. Yeah. Like that
I
that
just
that
and of course, with them both being black males, I mean, they're typically perceived as older and larger and more threatening.
Yeah, and that has been backed up by multiple
Yeah,
by
yeah.
lots
I
of
mean,
research. Yeah, that people just white people specifically tend
no,
to. Yeah, no, I know black people too. I mean
yeah,
everybody, but I mean the reason it's a problem
yeah,
is because white people do it. Yeah, that there's just a natural assumption. There's a perception that black people are larger and more dangerous than they actually are.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you look at a picture like that of a kid and you think like, what could this kid possibly do that would warrant them just completely losing their opportunity for a decent life from that point on?
in that
You
case,
know,
well, that picture that I showed you, let's make sure you see the caption. Can you see it?
I can't read it, but I can
You
find
can't
it in
read
my.
what it
Yeah,
says.
wait, read me what it
It
says.
says Wesson 1990, shortly after he was charged with attempted murder.
Yeah, so
So I mean, when they do have a gun, I mean, especially, it could be like eight. An 8-year-old with a gun is dangerous.
well,
Let's
yeah,
be honest.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Although as Sideshow Bob once said, attempted murder. What is that? They don't give out Nobel Prizes for attempted chemistry.
well, maybe they should, Bob. Have you thought about that?
I'm going to kill Bart Simpson. Um. Anyway, so he gets his letter from Justin, and it's bad news. Justin's mom is
Yeah,
dying. There's lots of bad mom news in this chapter. With we hear about Damon and his mom, who got sick with sickle cell anemia, and now Justin's mom is dying of Hodgkin's disease that apparently she's had for a while. And at first, they were hopeful that she was going to be okay because Hodgkin's is a cancer that has a really good recovery rate, but unfortunately, she is in the smaller percentage that don't recover from it. So, and again, as we heard about with Damon in the first part of the chapter, Justin's uh, Justin's older sister is away at college. His father isn't living with them, so he is stuck being the caretaker for his dying mom. And as a result, his obviously his grades are slipping because he has this other huge thing to worry about. And he's standing there reading this letter, and his friend Sean kind of notices that he's looking a little upset, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And and Wes says, "Hey, Sean, do you ever think about what your life would be like if you never came here?" And Sean just kind of shrugs and says, "I guess it would be about the same." And Wes just sort of goes along with it. But we know that, at this point, Wes feels that his life would not have been the same if he hadn't have come to this place, you know.
yeah,
Um, and it kind of, I appreciated that beat because it kind of, it's a little bit of a counterpoint to what we've been getting a lot of from Wes the author in the book so far, which is, I feel like I think we've mentioned this before that he's assigning a little bit more agency to himself than he probably actually had, or like, well, like I made the right choices and the other Wes made the wrong choices. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot, he sort of assuming a lot more autonomy than there actually was. And this is an instance where, he sort of has this unspoken moment of realization of like, I'm here and I'm turning my life around, not because I chose to come here, but because I was sent here by someone who had my best interests at heart. And I mean, he still deserves a lot of credit because he's doing good academically and he's doing good on the basketball team. It's not like it's all his mom's credit. It's not just because he got sent to military school. It's because he got sent to military school and it actually worked for him, as it doesn't work for everybody. But
Yeah.
still, it was a decision that was out of his hands
Yeah.
that worked in his favor, just like a lot of the decisions that were out of the other Wes's hands did
Worked
not
against
work in
him.
his favor. Yeah. So I feel like the book really needs that, to remind us that it's not as easy as saying, well, I went left and Wes went right, and we just wound up in different places. That's not what happened. You know.
Yeah. Rose points out the book said that people who detect the disease early usually survive, which made me wonder if she only died because she didn't have good health care.
That may be.
Similar
Yeah.
to Wes's father. I know that for people who are financially struggling, if there's something going on medically, there you don't want to go to the doctor and end up paying your copay, having to pay your copay or pay, for your deductible if it's like nothing. It's like, you've got bronchitis, just, take some antibiotics, it'll be okay. And
Right.
that if you just, rested and just made sure that you didn't push it too hard, you would have been okay anyway, because then it feels like you've wasted that money. Um,
Yeah.
if you just hope that it's not that bad, and in most cases it goes away, but then sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
And you're gambling.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're probably going to be okay, but you don't know, and maybe you won't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah. So now Wes meets up with another friend of his named Dalio, and Dalio is uh, a sergeant of another platoon.
Yeah.
Wes explains that his Company H, is broken up into two platoons, and he's the platoon sergeant for one, and Dalio is the platoon sergeant for the other. And Dalio comes up to him sort of at the end of their day, after they have sent their cadets to bed, and he says, "Hey, before we go to bed, do you want to go into town and get a stromboli?" And
Mm.
I know, right? Doesn't that? It's like, hell yeah, Dolly. Wait up, man. I'll come and get a stromboli with you. Uh,
No
and
meat for Steve.
unless it's
Although, I mean, come
tomorrow.
on, cheese and bread.
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah. Exactly. You don't even
Oh yeah,
taste
and
the
tomorrow
meat.
is cheat day.
Tomorrow's cheat day, so I could get me a goddamn stromboli tomorrow. Um, but yeah, so they walk to town, and there's a callback to the time when he tried to escape and he ended up getting lost. Because he says Wayne, which is the nearest town, he says it's only about 50 minutes away if you know how to get there. Um, so
He's
they're
older and more experienced now.
exactly, he knows the ways of the world. So he and Dalio are walking, and they're in their uniforms. Of course, they're coming straight from school, and they leave campus and they're walking to town to the Italian restaurant to get some stromboli. And this car comes up next to them, and someone from the car asks him what they're doing, and Wes says nothing, and the guy in the car says, "You mean nothing, sir?" So Wes says, "Nothing, sir," because he doesn't know who's in the car. He thought, well, maybe it's like an upperclassman, or maybe it's like someone I don't recognize them, but it's like another cadet, and you know,
I know who it
uh,
is.
and he says the person in the car says, "I'm Colonel Bose's son," and not only are you rude, but your uniform is in disarray, and I'm going to report you both. Now, I'm pretty sure their uniforms are not actually in disarray. That's just something that this drunk asshole is saying.
Well, I would like to point out that he said, oh, a teenager with unkempt black hair and a distinctive scar across the top of his forehead. It's drunk Harry Potter, apparently.
Douchebag upperclassman Harry Potter. That's hilarious.
Uh,
He like
maybe not,
tries
but
to wave his wand and he drops it and it like clatters to the ground and he has to open the car and
hang on a minute, guys.
oh,
Let me
for
out.
Christ's sake, Ron, Ron, hand me my wand. Oh fuck, you get back here, you. You're talking to. I'm Harry Potter. You.
Harry
Yeah.
Blinking Potter.
I'm Harry Blinking Potter.
I didn't. Wow, Steve.
You know how I would have written it.
But you use the non-swear swear word.
I'm Harry cocksucking motherfucking Potter.
And you had to fix it after
I
pointed
did.
it out.
I think I overcorrected a little, if I'm being honest. But
maybe just a smudge.
just a smudge.
Ah.
But yeah. So they the guys in the car drive away, and Dalio and Wes just kind of shrug at each other like, what was that? Then the car drives around the block and is coming up behind them again and is speeding toward them, like trying to run them over. They jump out of the way and they're like, what the fuck? What just happened?
Yeah.
So the car stops ahead of them and like, and they're not sure what's going to happen. And before anything else happens, another car comes up behind the car that just tried to hit him. So the drunk guys have to keep going. And Wes and Dalio get up, and Dalio's like, well, what do we do now? And Wes, at first, he's like, let's just keep going, right? Because those guys in the car that just tried to run us over, they're probably not coming back. They've done whatever they were going to do tonight. So let's just keep going and get to the restaurant and get our food like we planned to. Let's not let this ruin the night, you know? So they keep going, but they try to keep to the shadows and they walk a little faster, but they're still trying to go to the Italian restaurant. And they're almost there and they're just about to cross. They're crossing the street like to get to the restaurant, and they hear a voice yelling. And what the voice yells is "Go home, N-word." And then Wes, and then now sort of it's like, oh, okay, now you know what this is. Like you probably had like an inkling of what this was about, because I mean I don't think he doesn't specify that Dalio is white, but with a name like Dalio, he sounds, and he's going to get a Stromboli. He sounds like an Italian kid. And Wes, of course, is black. And now it's like, okay, that's why they're being hassled, because these drunk assholes are racist and they're fucking with the black kid. And they throw a bottle at him or a rock or so. Wes isn't really sure what it is, but it hits him in the mouth and he's bleeding. And he says, and it chips his tooth. And he says to Dalio, like, all right, I've been hit. Let's just forget the pizza shop. Let's just get out of here. So the car speeds away and they go and hide for a little bit. And Wes talks about how embarrassed he was because he got called the N-word in front of his comrade, he says, in front of his classmate. And then he also feels ashamed because he ran away or because he let it go, because these assholes call him the N-word in front of his friend out in the middle, out in public, in the street, in front of who knows, anybody could have been out there. And he just got, attacked by a racial slur, and he feels bad that he didn't bow up to him and try to kick their ass for calling him that. He's like, he feels bad for letting them get away with it. But then he also, says, well, but what was I going to do? Like stand in the middle of the street and wait for him to come back?
They came back.
Yeah,
and then car?
Yeah, and then what? Drag him out of the car and beat their asses? Like, what was I supposed to do? So he feels trapped. He doesn't, there's no
Good
way.
answer.
yeah, there's nothing that he can say or tell himself to make what happened any better, you know. Um, so him and his friend Dalio decide, okay, we're just going to go back to campus, and they go back. They don't go back the way they came. They don't go back through the streets of Wayne. They go through people's yards and fields, and eventually they wind up going through the woods where Wes went to try to escape years ago when they gave him the bad
Fake
map
map.
to yeah, to get him lost on purpose. And uh, and eventually they get back to campus, and the chapter ends with Wes writing, "The irony of the situation forced me to smile, featuring my newly cracked tooth. Years earlier, I had run through these same woods with all of my might, looking for safety, trying to get away from campus. Tonight, I ran through the same woods looking for safety, but in the other direction." So it's
But
it's a nice
it's a
moment,
nice,
but boy, ooh,
but also it's also ironic because Dahlia is the one who says, "Where are we?" And the
that
reason that Wes knows how to get back is because he tried to escape.
right,
In part,
right.
he's familiar with the terrain, and Dahlia isn't.
That's a good point. Yeah, Dalio is totally lost. He's never been there, and Wes is like, just follow
Yeah,
me. I
Wes
know
is
where I'm
like,
going.
"I got this."
Yeah,
I tried to run off one time, and that didn't work out so well, but it gave me some useful experience.
yeah. So I mean, and I feel like it's good because it's good to remind us, the readers, especially us as white readers, that this is something that Wes and the other Wes and just black folks in general have to deal with all the time. The book hasn't. It's been at least a couple of chapters, if not even longer, since it's dealt explicitly with racism, and with either of the Wesses being mistreated because of their blackness. So to have it come back in this chapter in such a devastating way, I feel like is a smart narrative choice and a smart sort of rhetorical choice. And also it's dramatically, I mean, it works really well because again, it hits you in the face. And I don't know about you, but when I was reading it, I had like it was almost like my heart sank when the drunk guy from the car calls him the N word, and you're just like, oh Jesus, like it can't just be some drunk asshole trying to start shit with guys in military uniforms. You know what I mean? Because like sometimes if some people just want to fuck with guys in uniform because they're like, oh, I think he's top. He thinks he's king shit just because he's walking around in a goddamn army. I could take him. You know what I mean? Like there are people that do that. They get drunk and they're dipshits and they just like to test people. Um, and it's like, well, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that. And that's not what it is. It's, you know, and it's just like,
Well,
oh, fuck.
but it could also combine it. Because one of the points that Carol Anderson made in White Rage is that racism flares when Black people are successful, where there's, are seen as successful or show that they expect success, essentially when they get uppity, or
Oh,
when they're
yeah.
not, when they don't know their place.
Yeah.
And so to have Wes, who talks about, standing straighter and walking with his head high and walking in his uniform that shows his position, that has his, his not badges, but like the little different colored pins that they've got that
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
what they've done,
Yeah.
his cords and things like that. Um, that that combined with him being Black sets it off further. And I also think narratively it makes sense to have, after this high point that he's achieved so much, that
Yeah.
it also reflects that, you know kind of what you said about connecting with that episode of
I
DS9.
was just thinking that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't, you can do everything right and it won't matter.
To some people, it just doesn't. And to a lot of people, and to the system itself, even. Like, it just,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Um, and that's one of the reasons that I really, the book, I'm gonna have to look this up on Goodreads. I don't remember what it was right off the top of my head, and I just, not the one that I just finished today, but the one right before this one. So I'm gonna have to go to over to my read section. Um, and it's because I think I said that when in my review. So go to my books, because I read The Hate You Give.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
The Poet X, the Poet X. So that was before White Rage. And in The Hate You Give, she's with a friend of hers. He's driving, and they get pulled over, and he gets told to. They're told to get out of the car, and they have their hands up on the dashboard, and he reaches back into the car to get like a comb, and the cop sees him reaching into the car and shoots him because he thought he was
Yeah.
reaching for a gun. So that ties in, again, he's a kid and he's reaching for a comb. And so,
Yeah.
that ties in with what we were talking about earlier about um, the impression, especially of Black men, that they are more dangerous than similarly sized and similarly aged non-Black peers. And so anyway, part of that story is that the protagonist is the girl who's with him and how she deals with that. And she, like the author, is going to a private school, and unlike the author in the private school, she's she's navigating the very much like the author, she's navigating the private school life and her home life, and sort of feeling pulled between the two of those. Like she wears these two different faces.
Yeah.
And she acts differently in the different environments. And on the other hand, unlike the author, she's doing well academically. She's making good choices, she's following up, and yet at the same time, she still gets embroiled in this situation. So it reinforces that. And it's one of the reasons that I like books like the follow-up, which is On the Come Up, where you have a girl who's not going to private school, she's going to the public school, and it's set sort of in the same general neighborhood, I think, but she wants to be a rapper. And so she's staying up late to go to rap battles and slams and stuff for her. And similarly with the Poet X, she writes poetry, and she doesn't say anything about it. The English teacher sort of notices the way that she writes and invites her to poetry club, but she just sort of is like, no,
Yeah.
because she's not interested in being involved academically. So anyway, just sort of as things continue, and it's kind of about them artistically and how they pursue that. And they don't what I like about it is they don't necessarily make just all the right choices, because I feel like a lot of times especially when there's a Black female protagonist, in order for her to be seen as not relatable, but in order to get the readers to root for her, she's, very much, she has to, get good grades and behave the right way. She has to do the right things in order to be respectable. There's definitely I feel like there's some respectability politics going on.
Yeah.
So I really like when there are stories of your protagonist not making good choices and doing dumb stuff that 15-year-olds do. The Poet X especially, she's a sophomore, and I really, she reads very much like the sophomores in my classes, even though we're a rural area and most of my students are white, but they're going through that process of pulling away from the values of their family, and or not necessarily just pulling away from, but questioning the values of their family and their community, and sort of looking at themselves, who am I if I'm not just the sister, the daughter, the the student? If I'm not these top-down imposed values, what are my values? Are they the same as these or not, and why? And it's very much a sophomore issue, and the questioning and the pushing back feels very authentic in some of those books. And so the fact that he sort of went through that kind of earlier,
Yeah,
but And now we're seeing that he's kind of come back around and sort of claimed those values for himself. And yet he's in that position of, did that, what does that say about me? That I'm
Yeah.
not standing up for myself in this way. And, he is able to take a breath and look at the practicality of it, or the lack of practicality of responding, and look at how it plays out in the rest of his life, the consequences for, how am I going to deal with this? And when is it too much? And what do I do about that?
Yeah.
So,
And it occurs to me that he wants to do what the other Wes would have done, which when someone disrespects you, you
mm-hmm.
give it right back to them and you make an example. The first, like the initial reason that he feels bad is because he didn't do that.
Yeah,
Even
he just
though,
let somebody step all over him.
yeah, even though as he he rationalizes it, and it's not just rationalizing, it's reasonable to say
Yeah,
like, well,
he's
what
like, I
what could
could
I have done?
actually, yeah,
And I mean, what would the other Wes have done? The other Wes
exactly.
would have probably been strapped, and he would have pulled his gun and he would have fired a whole bunch of bullets into the back window of that car. Um, but but failing something like that, but I just that's it's interesting that in this situation, either out of you know good judgment and discretion, or just out of the fact that there was nothing else he could have done,
Yeah,
he didn't do what the other West would have done, or what the other West would have tried to do. And in this case, it's almost definitely for the better, you
yeah,
know, that he just got back to school, even though he felt terrible about it. So, well, that's the end of chapter 6. And we only have 2 chapters left.
yeah.
So next time we'll do chapter 7, and chapter 7 is also the start of a new part of the book. So we'll do the introductory part plus chapter 7. Um, and then after that, it's just chapter 8, and then we're done. Do you want to announce the next book, or do you
No,
want
I
me?
think you should, Steve.
Well, I will, but do you want us to talk about it? Just to give
Sure,
people
a little bit, a little bit.
to give
Because
people
I'm
time to.
curious, I'm curious what makes you choose it. Because you're choosing
Well,
this one.
I'm choosing this one, and it's a book I've never read. But it's a book that I got interested in it. I read about it. I forget where I even first heard about it, but I learned about it a couple years ago, and I actually bought it for my Kindle, and then just never got around to reading it. But it's a novel.
That never happens to me.
No, well, no, that never. Well, it happens too because you check out like 20 books at a time.
Not always, just, it's over the summer.
Yeah, sure.
Theoretically, I should have time to read, right?
Theoretically.
Oh, crap.
Theoretically. Um, but yeah, so the book, it's a novel, and it's called Quicksand by Nella Larson, and it was published in 1928, and it's the debut novel of Nella Larson, and she is a writer who was part of the Harlem Renaissance, and it is a book about a woman who is biracial, and she is sort of struggling with her racial identity. And I get the impression it's kind of semi autobiographical because Nella Larson herself was of mixed race parentage,
Mm-hmm.
and that was something that she struggled with. So it seems like it's kind of a semi autobiographical novel, and it's one of those things that it was well respected when it was first published, and then it was kind of forgotten about for a long time, and then it was sort of rediscovered a few decades ago, when a lot of literature from the 20s, and especially Harlem Renaissance literature, was being reevaluated and rediscovered, and people saying like, oh, this is actually really good, and we need to put this back out in front of people. So like I said, I can't remember where I first heard about it, but it was mentioned in something I was reading a couple years ago, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to read that, and I found it on Kindle and got it and just never read it. So, if you want to,
Well, what
yeah,
brought it back to your attention recently?
you said, hey, you pick the next book,
Oh, so you went back through and looked,
and
and that was the
I
thing that.
actually. when you said when you said that I should pick the next book, that book actually popped into my head almost right away
Really?
because I remembered, like I remembered that I have it. I'm not like constantly thinking about it. If I was constantly thinking about it, I would have read the thing by now. But
Fair enough.
when you said, like, pick the, because the first thought I had, because I don't read nearly as much as you do. Like, you're a way better, more well read than I am, and so, but when you said you should pick the next book, my first thought was, oh shit, what book am I going to pick? You know, and I
Fair.
and I wanted to pick something that was in line with what we've done so far. So I wanted to pick something that was fairly serious. I didn't want to do like, oh, let's read a Batman book. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted it to be like, literary, and not super obvious. Because like, The Dispossessed is a really popular book, but I mean, it's not like, Charles Dickens or something. Like, it's not something that everybody has read. So, and then Other Westmore is, again, it's well known in certain circles, but it's not like a super bestseller that everybody's read. Um, so I wanted to pick something that was in that line, and I remembered Quicksand, and I thought, well, why don't we read that? So, and then I was thinking about it today because I read the chapter for today, and I realized, oh, we only have 2 chapters left. I should pick a book. So
And
I
you're like,
picked a book.
hey,
So I picked a book. So for those of you who are watching along with us, if you want to continue to read along with us, and we really hope that you would, the next book is Quicksand by Nella Larson. And you still have a few weeks because we still have 2 more chapters of this book to do,
and we're only doing it every other week.
and we
So,
do it every other week. So you've got a while yet. But if you want to keep reading along, and like I say, I got my copy on Kindle. If you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, I think you can get it through there without paying anything extra if you don't want to buy it. And it's in print, so your library might have it or be able to request it through interlibrary
yes,
loan or something like that.
I'm going to attempt to get it through interlibrary loan.
Yeah. So, and I think actually, Dana, I think I can lend you my Kindle copy if you can't find it. I think I can I've never done that before, but I'm given to understand I can electronically lend you my Kindle copy. So if it comes to that, like I'll definitely make sure you get a copy of it.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, so anybody who wants to read along with us, Quicksand by Nella Larson is going to be our book after we finish The Other Westmore. So there you go. And I believe that is it.
Sounds like it is.
Do you?
Except
Yeah.
don't forget about the charity links.
The charity links, which I almost forgot about on Wednesday. If you hadn't pulled my ass out of the frying pan, you would have.
And
You
into
had
the
to remind
fire.
me.
Wait.
Out of the fire into whichever. You pulled my
So one
ass
of
out of
those
something, and
things, you know.
you pulled my ass out of something my ass shouldn't have been in, and I appreciate it.
Oh boy.
Um,
The places we could go in that one.
I appreciated it that time. Other times you should just
You've
leave
seen
my
The Lion King, right?
Other times you should just leave my ass right the hell there. Um, but no, I've never seen The Lion King actually.
Good gravy, Steve.
It's talking lions. Come on.
And it's got Nathan Lane.
That's true. It does have Nathan Lane, and he's so talented. He is. That sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but he is legitimately a fantastically talented man. Um, but yeah, so don't forget the charitylinks.page, and it's also linked in the description of the video. And if you
Down
click that,
there.
if you get down there, and if you click that link, you'll go to a Google Doc that our friend Some Random Geek maintains for us, where he has charity links and PayPal links and GoFundMe pages and legal defense funds and all kinds of other stuff for people who need a little bit of a helping hand, who are in some financial distress and could use your help. So if you have a few extra bucks that you can toss their way, please do so. They would appreciate it. We would appreciate it. Charitylinks.page linked down below. And also don't forget that Dana has a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dana Coldares, which is also linked in the description. And I believe you have a new video coming out tomorrow, don't you?
I do. I actually remembered to write the description for it. So it's
You
already
did.
and it's queued up and scheduled, and you can learn things. Yay!
It's actually I would expect, I don't know, but I mean, you're doing videos about MLA format
Yes.
and how to do, and it's basically like a tutorial kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that would need a video like that, where you walk them through it step by step and show them how to set up a document with the right font and the right margins and stuff. Like, it's technical, but it's stuff that especially students, I think, would need to know. So
Well,
hopefully,
I'm hoping it'll be useful because
yeah.
like on the days when I do that, because it's talking through and talking through and talking, and be like, look, can you just listen to that because my throat is tired.
Just watch this video I made.
It's so much talking when I do it for multiple classes a day, and I'm saying, okay, so look up here on the screen where I'm doing it for you, because there, I'll have my screen, I'll have it shared, and I'm actually working on
On
the
the
screen that I
projector, on
got
the screen,
projected.
yeah, yeah.
I'll say, all right, so to change the font, you want to change the font, all of it. So make sure you select all. Don't just click and drag, because if you click and drag, there's the chance that you won't get everything. So I demonstrate, when you click and drag, and then you select what you think is everything, and then you press return, and you go to the next paragraph, and you start typing, and then it's in the original font.
It's in the original font, yeah.
Drag, because you didn't select all. And like I'll be looking, I'll be like, I saw you click and drag because I saw it, like I saw what you, or I'll pull up their Google Doc on my screen. I'll be like, okay, so I'll go through like all the Google Docs in Google Classroom. I'll be like, okay, so and so, it's looking good. Next, you need to change your font. No, don't click and drag. I can see how you're highlighting it, because it looks
You can
different
see it,
when
yeah,
when you select all. It's just like boom.
right. When you click and drag, it's progressive.
You can see,
yeah,
you can see it. I mean, I don't, I'm not watching them do it, but I can see it moving on the screen. I'm like,
yeah.
I can tell what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. Oh,
I'm looking right at you.
You're not doing. You're doing exactly what I said. Don't do.
Why can't you just follow directions?
But the thing is, it's like step and step and step, and there's so many steps, and it's not difficult per se, but it is tedious, and
yeah.
You miss one thing and it's like, wait, which one did I miss? Especially you don't have to do them in order. Like you can change the spacing before you change the font, or vice versa. So,
and now you have a video.
You're gonna miss something and then forget about it.
Now you have a video of it, and you can just tell the little shits to watch the video.
I probably wouldn't phrase it that way.
Yeah. All right, you little shits, sit down, shut up. We're gonna watch a video. I don't want to.
Steve, that's not appropriate.
That's why I'm not a teacher. I'd be a great one-time substitute teacher that would never get called again.
Yeah.
All right, you little bastard, sit down and shut up. Don't make me have to tell you again, God damn it.
Mommy, the bad man smelled funny.
I like the idea of me being a substitute teacher who is just barely holding it together, who is an absolute mess, is probably drunk, and is just like, he's always like a half a second away from just completely collapsing, from having a total breakdown. Like, just sit down and shut up. Don't say a word. That's my fantasy. But anyway, so you have your video goes up tomorrow, and everybody should watch all of your videos. And what should they do in addition to watching your videos?
Please leave me comments. I am like, subscribe.
You like comments?
That's great. That's great. That's great. What I really want are comments.
Feedback, baby.
Yes.
And as we mentioned earlier, I have a new video coming out on Monday, which is a commentary.
A rant.
A rant. Yes, it is kind of a rant. It's about all the attention that billionaires going to space is getting. And I've just had it. Like, Branson went up last week, Bezos is going up next week, and it's just like, God.
No. Remember
Bezos. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is going to space. And it's like, just leave him there. It's like, it's like the space travel equivalent of when someone like when someone double parks their car or you know parks like in a parking lot and they take up two spaces and you
So
ever
you
have
park
like
them in.
yeah and like you ever have the fantasy of like slashing their tires and being like you wanted it parked there so bad it can fucking stay there, you know. And it's like the space version of that where it's like okay Joff, okay, you know, Dick
Maybe
Branson,
next time he'll think before he double parks.
like you
Doesn't
wanted to go.
doesn't doesn't quite fit the rhythm, but you get the idea.
You get the idea, but it's like you know, it's like you guys, you want to go to space so bad, well, you can fucking stay there. How you like that? But anyway, so that's Monday. Wednesday is where do we go from here about student loan forgiveness, and
Next
Wednesday is
Friday is Ask Away.
next Friday is Ask Away, and also Wednesday is our next Trek Reluctantly stream, where we are watching Duet,
Duet.
one of the most critically acclaimed episodes of Deep Space Nine, certainly of the
See,
first
I
season.
can't wait. I can't wait to find out who's singing.
Ah, it's Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. They do Islands in the Stream. It's beautiful. Um, and it's completely out of context. It's like, you know, Cisco and Kira are arguing about something, and then they turn a corner on the promenade, and for some reason, there's Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton,
Yeah.
and they are killing
Dolly
it.
Parton's awesome. Kenny Rogers, he's all right.
I mean, he, you know,
Exactly.
he sings his part of that song, so you know he's fine. Um, My favorite Kenny Rogers moment is when he was a guest on Conan O'Brien's show, and Conan gave him a blind taste test where he had a piece of fried chicken from Kenny Rogers Roasters and a piece of fried chicken from the NBC commissary in the building there, and he could not tell which one was Kenny Rogers Roasters. It made me so happy.
Why was that so important to you?
I just like seeing Kenny Rogers humiliated. There's something about it. Because I'm like, all right, look, okay, I like The Gambler. The Gambler's a cool song. Who doesn't like The Gambler? But like, okay, you've been riding that horse for 30 years, bud. Come on.
Wouldn't you? You totally would, Steve.
If I didn't have anything else. Of course, I guess he had Kenny Rogers Roasters. But then he fucked that up too. So, but anyway, so that's what's coming up in the next week or so from us, and I guess that's it. So thanks everybody for reading along with us and listening to us blather on about this book and about a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with this book.
Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton.
Kenny Rogers, you know what, and that's on you though, because you brought up the duet thing, and that's the first place I went to was like, what's a duet? Islands in the Stream. Who did Islands in the Stream? So that's, you know,
It could have been Elton John and Kiki D.
Or you mentioned, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I remember it could have been Elton John and George Michael, because they duetted on George Michael's cover of "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me."
Or Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey.
Oh, now you're talking. Holy shit!
Did you watch Prince of Egypt?
No, I didn't watch Prince of Egypt. I love how I answer that as though I'm insulted by it. I'm not insulted by you asking me that, but it's just like, for some reason I responded like, how the...
You should know that I don't actually have any taste in movies.
You have good taste in movies.
No. As in you're because like I asked you about the Lion King, you're like, I haven't watched Lion King, and you haven't watched Prince of Egypt, and so you're just like, you know what, you know, you should just, Dana, why do you keep asking me about good movies? You should know I haven't seen them.
Wow. I will say, of the movies that we have watched together over the last several months, over the last year, I guess, the movies of yours that you have that we've watched together, that you have been kind enough to share with me. I think there's only been one that I haven't liked, right? Because I think was it Taxi, the Jimmy Fallon Queen Latifah movie?
Queen Latifah?
I mean, nothing against Queen Latifah. Jimmy Fallon can burn in hell forever for having Donald Trump on the show and mussing his hair. But that was the only one that I didn't really like. The other ones I all thought were in ranging from pretty good to really, really good. But Taxi, I was just like, you know.
I I mean, Queen Latifah is awesome.
She's terrific. Yeah, she's terrific in pretty much everything.
I love her.
Yeah.
Because I mean, first of all, she's amazing. Second of all, she is a big girl. She is almost as large as I am. And third, of course, her name is Dana.
That's right. Her legal name or her birth name is, yeah.
I'm just like, that's so cool. And she's so amazing. But yeah, of course she's awesome in it. And then we definitely got some eye candy in that. I mean, yeah.
What's the eye candy? I can't remember.
Her boyfriend.
Oh, is that
No.
That's not your man, is it? Shamar Moore?
No,
it's not him.
Not him. But
it's oh my God, yes, it's oh fuck.
It's the guy you knew who it was.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know who he is.
Yeah, Mac from Henry Simmons. Yeah, yes. Mac from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and also Baldwin Jones from NYPD Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Neither of which I've seen. So.
Not only is he easy on the eyes, which I grant you, he totally is. Fantastic actor.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, but anyway.
So, and then also, but I mean, it's also got Giselle Bündchen.
That's true. Yeah, she's like the head thief. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's good. She's funny.
Yeah. Oh, even unintentionally. Because my favorite part, I think, of the movie is one of the outtakes where she's like she's patting down the cop, and then she just bursts in laughter. She goes, "I squeeze her butt."
Yeah.
Fantastic accent.
Bless your heart.
She's giggling. It's the most adorable freaking thing. So.
So anyway, that's it.
We said that like 5 minutes ago.
A little random talk about the movie Taxi, and that's it. Anyway, thank you as always for joining me, Dana.
Thank you for having me, Steve, and thank you for continuing to read the book, because you could be like, you know what? This is my channel. Go away.
I don't want to read.
I don't want to read.
This is YouTube. We don't read here. Anyway, so
except for my shiny plaque.
And all I need to do is that's literally 3 lines, and one of the lines is my name. So
no, it's not.
Yeah,
it's 4.
Oh, that's true. YouTube. Yeah. 4 lines.
Woo!
Is that a line or is that a logo? I guess that counts as a line. There's text in it. Anyway, okay, we're done for real now. Thanks everybody for watching.
Bye.
And we'll see you next time. Have a good night and have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.